when I was asked to talk about Sudan Memory, the project that I was involved with in Khartoum, Sudan in 2020, I had a moment of small panic because this was, yeah? I had a bit of a panic because where to start talking about such a massive project? It involved hundreds of people in Sudan and across the world. And, you know, do you talk about the technical side of scanning metadata, that kind of thing, or do you talk about the content that was digitized? Another thing that I had to deal with was how to convey
Violencia.
how to convey the magnitude of, you know, destruction and devastation caused by the war that's ongoing in Sudan. So in the end, I decided that I would pare it down, and I'll give you an explanation about the project, but also talk about it from my own personal perspective. So the project itself, Sudan Memory itself, started in 2017 and was a collaboration between Sudanese institutions and international partners, including King's College in London. And the main aim, or the initial aim of the project, was to digitize collections in Sudan's main cultural and educational institutions. This included the National Records Office, which holds hundreds of thousands of historic manuscripts and newspapers, amongst other things. Another institution on the initial list was the University of Khartoum, with its rare collection of handwritten Qur'ans, academic books, magazines, etc. And the overall aim of the project was to make digital copies of these valuable items of Sudanese cultural heritage because they were at risk of destruction due to conflict, but also because of environmental factors and things like storage facilities and dust, etc. So the project started in 2017. By the time it was completed in 2022, the extent and range of the content that had been digitized was enormous. And it ran into the hundreds of thousands of items, including audio recordings, films, 3D images, and much more. And it was not just from official institutions and museums, it also included a variety of private collections in Sudan and abroad. So Sudan Memory is the name of the website that was launched at the end of the project. And on it, you can see it showcases material that was digitized from various collections. This is just samples of the material that was digitized. And all the items on the website have metadata in both English and Arabic. So this is just a sample of some of the collections that are on the website. So, as I said, the war in Sudan has had a devastating effect on everything. So, towns, cities, everything was, I haven't pressed it. This was supposed to come later, but anyway, they're nice pictures. So the war and the artillery, heavy use of, is it automatic? Okay, thank you. The heavy use of artillery in towns and residential areas destroyed thousands of lives and homes. Millions of people were forced to flee, abandoning everything they owned. It's something that I have personally been affected by. So far we know that 2 of the collections that were digitized on Sudan Memory have been completely destroyed. And they include the Natural History Museum collection that no longer exists. Also a private collection belonging to Griselda Tayyip. As for the other collections, we still don't have enough information about whether they're still there or not. However, all this makes it clear that what was digitized or parts of what was digitized is even more important now. So I personally, I grew up in Sudan and can remember my childhood in the Khartoum of the late 1970s and 80s. To me, it felt like a cosmopolitan city where people of different nationalities and a variety of different Sudanese ethnic groups lived side by side. At school, I remember having friends from Indian, Armenian, Greek, Italian, and Syrian descent who were Sudanese of these people, of this descent. We had people from Ethiopia, Kenya, and England at school with us. There were people from all parts of Sudan. And all this, to me, felt normal. However, as I grew older, I remember how, over time, things started to change, and restrictions were imposed by the military dictator Nimeri, who, in 1983, brought in his version of Sharia law, which became a watershed in Sudan. For example, this was the first time that the state had directly intervened in the private sphere and dictated what women were allowed to wear in public. The laws were Nimeri's attempt to silence opposition and cling onto power, but in the process, Sudan became a less tolerant place, where a particular identity was championed as being Sudanese, and anyone diverging from it was othered. So another vivid memory from my childhood was the 1985 popular uprising that ousted Nimeri. So one fact that maybe not many of you know is Sudan was way ahead of many of these, the Arab Spring countries. We had revolutions and uprisings since 1968. So we've had 3, but unfortunately, they haven't lasted. So the 1985 popular uprising that ousted Nimeri, who I was talking about, and I can remember we drove down with my family to Nile Avenue, and we could see the masses of people streaming down the road. Everybody was euphoric and joyful, hoping for a better future. But this was short-lived. But by the end of the decade, another military ruler seized power. It was in what, as I was saying, has become a familiar cycle in Sudan of short-lived democracies followed by lengthy military authoritarian dictatorships. So Bashir took up where Nimeri had left off and imposed an even stricter form of social engineering and tighter policing of the public sphere, reinforcing the supremacy of an Arab Muslim identity over all others. So any references to the Sudan that I was familiar with, or to the social movements such as the 1985 uprising, were omitted or completely erased from any public archives or mainstream media. And this is why I think a project like Sudan Memory is invaluable. Through digitizing such a range of content, it has managed to capture elements of Sudanese culture that are a fundamental part of our national identity. The project includes items from the ancient kingdom of Kush, Sudan's Christian era, the Mahdi, and colonial rule up until modern-day Sudan at the sit-in site during the 2018-19 uprising. So over time, Sudan Memory grew so that it not only covered government institutions and universities, but included museums and collections from Darfur in the west to the Red Sea in the east, and from Abri in northern Sudan to Sinnar and Blue Nile in the south. As word spread about the project, people came forward with their own private collections to have their photographs and documents digitized, to preserve them, but also share them on their website. So, as I said, this is some of the collections on the website. But what I found interesting while working on the project was how the power structures that had influenced what people could and couldn't see in public had been inadvertently replicated in the archives that has been created by Sudan Memory. So during the process of selecting what to include, government and public institutions carefully controlled what could and could not be scanned. Through various levels of bureaucracy and gatekeeping, only items that were deemed suitable were approved for scanning, while others were strictly prohibited, such as documents relating to slavery in Sudan. This is not to say that these scans aren't important, because now, of course, anything that was scanned is valuable. On the other hand, when I look at the private collections that are on Sudan memory, I have a different sort of experience. So in particular, I look at two collections from the one is the Rashid Mahdi Studio from the 1960s and 70s. And these, so in these photos, you can see people of different nationalities and Sudanese from different ethnic groups who all once lived in Adbara and had their photos taken at this private studio. And this is just similar to the Sudan I can remember. You can see different ways of dress and hairstyles. You can see traditions that were deemed immodest and banished from public view. So it's reassuring for me to look at these, to look through these, because it shows that I wasn't just imagining that things were different. It also shows that things could maybe change again. So my time's up. I'm just going to zoom through the last bit. So another powerful collection captured by Sudan memory is that of the 2018-19 popular uprising that toppled Omar al-Bashir. And so the photos of these murals, painted by young activists around the sit-in site, bring back memories of the sense of hope in a new Sudan that was proud of its diversity and united by its culture and history, sentiments that had for years been suppressed. And herein, I think, lies the power of the archive. It's a form of resilience and a way to safeguard memory against forgetting what has been before. It reaffirms cultural identities and belonging, and it fills a vacuum that can quickly be filled by propaganda or made-up histories. And I think this is my last point. Having this archive, even though it only represents a small fraction of what is or was available to be scanned, is vital for a post-war Sudan. To rebuild peace and foster social cohesion, we must look at our history and all the cultural references we can find within it. Thank you.